on it, not be able to test part of it, or worse, test part of it, find out it's not out of compliance, and take action against more than one permit because we don't know which one it is. So this really helps clarify that we would be able to make sanctions on only where there was a violation. So, Rule 2.15, no land area may be included in more than one concurrent registration. And again, that really is clarifying what's already kind of in rule. Getting back to that volunteer plants, there's a number of rules that you're going to see where this is addressed. 3.2, 3.21, and 3.22 for commercial, same thing only under R&D. That really address handling of volunteer plants. So within 10 days after planting and/or, I mean, the green was what it used to say. The red part is the and/or 10 days after emergence of any volunteer industrial hemp plants in the registered land area that the registrant chooses to cultivate and not destroy. Each commercial registrant, or R&D in the case of the last ones, shall submit on a form provided by the commissioner a planning report that includes, and really, it just to summarize, it means you're going to provide a description and the location of where it is. Same thing you do if you planted the variety. So this is this really, we think, helps us address that stuff that comes up. Farmer decides he doesn't want to have it, he can just disc it down, and there's not a problem. You don't have to do something with it other than destroy it or decide to declare it. And this gives you the means to declare it. And it gives you a reasonable amount of time to see that it's emerging, make a decision of what you want to do, and let us know. Okay? This again is how to move plant material. One of the issues we've had is that discussion I just had about planting reports, harvest reports. What does it mean? How do I use it? I just mentioned about in a young plant process to a pre-finished or to a finished or to a retailer. This kind of carries on with that same thing. And it's really because most people think of it is not flowering, I'm not harvesting, but it's this really talks about it. Don't think of this as growing on, because think of it as a process. You know, how are you moving through the process? So 3.12 for commercial, 3.53 for R&D. A planting report must be submitted anytime industrial hemp is planted in, moved within, or moved into a registered land area, except where replanting into a larger container within the same indoor location. Now, the last one is in part, selfishly, there's only so much paperwork we can handle. So for those that have spent much time in a greenhouse and know how things move through a greenhouse from the prop area to hardening off area, in the ornamental industry you call it stage 1, stage 2. It kind of goes through the whole production stage, just germination on until it's ready to harden off and go to that. So even in that germination stage, it's got stages. So we don't want to have where if you are planting something inside an indoor facility, it's going to be staying there, but you're going to move it from a real small cell to a little 4-inch pot. Or you're going to move it from one area in the greenhouse as it moves through those same different stages, but even in the same container. We don't need to know that. We think if we have the other information that's pertinent, we're able to demonstrate that a registrant has kept the material inside that greenhouse and has just moved it as part of their production plan. Okay? Currently, the rules tell you to turn in a planting report for a planting date. That sounds like really great, but it's kind of like factory. You kind of say, I'm going to harvest on August 30th, and it rains on August 30th. Well, currently, technically, it'd be out of compliance with the rules. we've recognized for a long time that, that's really a guideline to help us determine when we're gonna go out there and sample. But to clarify it in rule, we've said that we recognize weather, other factors can change what you're doing. Things may not harvest, or cool days may not cause plant material to mature quite as quick, so we understand that. And so the next rule really establishes a 10-day harvesting window. So rule 3.3 and 3.63, a registrant must notify the commissioner immediately of any changes in the reported harvest dates in excess of 5 days. 5 days before, 5 days after your 10-day window. Of any such changes, if any such changes are made, the commissioner may require additional testing prior to harvest. And the reason that last sentence is there is so that somebody doesn't say, I want to come in and harvest on August 30th. Now on September 4th, he's nowhere near harvesting. So we did a test September 15th. Now it gets to August 15th. Now it gets to September 15th, and he's still not ready to harvest. So he's way past. Well, we all know that THC level climbs as plants mature. It would be unfair to other registrants. It would be unfair to the program. And really unfair to that registrant because he may be trying to move that plant material before he knows what its real THC is. So in those cases, we would come back potentially and do additional testing. Routine sampling. This one is important as we move towards certified seed. If we look at right now, you are selected for sampling and inspection. That means you're going to incur a cost. Sampling cost of $150, time, the inspector's time, mileage, potentially per diem. Well, as we move from sampling and inspection, and we move to a certified seed program, we shouldn't have to be sampling every field. We should have done our job on the front end to recognize that those varieties will produce material that's below 0.3. We want to be able to go out, look at records. Maybe that's, you say you've planted 100 acres of seed, show me a bill of lading or bag tag, seed tags that said you bought 100 acres worth of seed and what it was, and then we'll try to verify that it's the same variety that you planted, and we'll take that and we'll move on. We'll focus our resources on places that maybe aren't using certified seed. So this allows us to focus our resources, but also ensures that registrants aren't unduly paying for testing. It also means that if we get out to that, again, that did not plant, should be plants there. We'll do that as part of a routine inspection, but we won't be charging for it as long as there's nothing there. So this one's longer, 4.2. In addition to any routine inspections and sampling under Rule 4.1, the commissioner may inspect and take samples from any registered land area during normal business hours without advance notice if he has reason to believe a violation of the Act or these rules may be occurring. The commissioner may also conduct such additional inspection and sampling to verify compliance with the reporting requirements of these rules. I'm going to tell you this is also in part because we've had some bad players, a bad player in particular. So we had a gentleman that decided he was going to let us know he was growing 10,000 marijuana plants on his, well, actually he said 100 to 10,000 on his registered land area for industrial hemp. He was selected for sampling, and when we got ready to go out to sample, he made a few pointed phone calls that said he had contacted the local law enforcement and we would be arrested for trespassing, and if we did take any samples, we'd be arrested for theft. So he declared, even though the rules say you can only grow industrial hemp on the property, he acknowledged he was growing marijuana outside of the program rules, and then he said we had no access to look at the land area or to take samples. So what we have said is that, just to clarify We don't want to have to be taking samples. We don't want to have to be doing inspections, but when we find it necessary, we think there has to be a clause that allows us to do so without trying to stretch into other clauses that give us the authority. This just clears it up for the registrants. Early termination of a registration. This really, again, came about this year in part because of sampling. But it's really important all the way through the program. When we issue a registration, we probably get called 2, 3 a week from law enforcement that says, boy, is this location registered? And we will confirm a location to law enforcement over the phone. We will not print. We won't give any list out to anyone. That information we feel is confidential business information. But we also know that law enforcement, and the first case was someone with the fire department was calling and the place was burning down, and we had a policy in place at the time that we wouldn't give any information about a registrant other than, here's their contact information. Well, it seems like that was maybe a bad policy while the building was burning. So we kind of took a little different look at it and said, okay, how do we find ways to work together? And we decided that the best way to do that was to be able to confirm a registration or confirm an address, confirm that it's a current registration. So that's what we do. So all year long, we're providing basically cover. Law enforcement calls. They don't know if it's an illegal marijuana grow. It's not, it's not a marijuana grow in the MAD system. And so we turn around and say, yes, it is a registered grow. We'll go be doing random sampling. We'll be looking at. We don't promise that we'll be at those sites to verify. In part, not so much because of law enforcement, but I also get a number of phone calls from neighbors that just don't like it. So if we went out every time a neighbor called, we'd be at everybody's facility 100 times. So we kind of take it with, I don't want to say a grain of salt, 2 or 3 grains of salt, but it doesn't, just because somebody calls doesn't mean we're going to go out there. So all summer long, we're confirming to law enforcement that it is a registered hemp location, and then sampling came up, and it was time to do random sampling, and somebody said, well, I'd like out of the program now. And what that made us realize is that, gee, all summer long we've provided cover, and then they wanted out of the program, and we want to make sure that we're not giving false security to law enforcement, so that if somebody wants to get out of the program, there may be very legitimate reasons to get out of a business relationship, maybe very legitimate reasons to get out of the program. Sold the land, want to turn it into development, want to just close up. There's lots of good reasons to get out. We just know that to ensure compliance and integrity of the program, we think it's necessary to be able to have to do inspection and sampling in some cases when we feel it's necessary. So 4.3, a registered land area may be subject to inspection and sampling prior to voluntary termination of a registration before its expiration date. May. So again, this goes back to what I talked about early, and that was the 0.3% THC and what our limit is. We have, again, we put the rules in because of what we've seen for activity. So this one really addresses that the department's jurisdiction is really at 0.3% to make it very clear to everybody. So there isn't any misunderstanding about 0.3 or 1%. And it also allows us to reach out to law enforcement, which right now is a difficult situation as we look back and forth at the rules, how we enacted them. So, this one is really long, so I'm not even going to read it all. But it does say that a sample with a test result above that delta 9 THC concentration still means that one or more plants in that area is above that, above the legal limit. outside of our jurisdiction receives such test results, we can still summary, suspend, revoke. But the part that's different, I highlighted in red. So with the THC delta-9 concentration greater than 0.3%, not 1%, on a dry weight basis may be provided to law enforcement agencies. So I'll kind of give you an example. We had a registrant that has had a test that's from 0.3 to 1. They decided to quit communicating with us. Didn't feel it was necessary to ask for a waiver. And we're stuck in a position of, do we go to law enforcement? Don't we go to law enforcement? What can we communicate? How can we communicate? So we know we have the right to communicate because it is above 0.3 where our legal jurisdiction stops. But the registrant may not feel that way. So we want to make sure we clarify it for everybody. This is similar. So this really, again, addresses the waiver request. Right now, there's no duration how long you can ask for a request. We would assume that if you were growing it, harvesting it, at some point in time, you're going to do something with it other than just grow it, especially if it was an outside grow when you look outside today. So to help us communicate with whether that's law enforcement, whether that's with the registrant, so we aren't, as I mentioned, sometimes we don't have as good of contact information or people aren't communicating as well. Let's put some of the burden on them instead of us to chase it down. A registrant shall have 10 days from the date of notification of a test higher than 0.3% delta-9 THC concentration to request a waiver as provided in Rules 5.1 and 5.2. So it gives you a reasonable time to contemplate what you're doing, but not to drag it on forever. We've got to be able to, if law enforcement were to call us on day 2, it's one thing to say, the registrant is considering what he's going to do with the crop. He's looking at his options of on-site destruction. But if that's 2 months later, I got a hard time looking at that law enforcement agent in the face and saying, yeah, the registrant's being really compliant. He's just not answering our phone calls, and he doesn't really feel like there's a necessity to ask for a waiver. I don't really know what he's doing, but I'm sure he's compliant. So now we're going to move into the certified seed, some of the rules of the program and what the program really amounts to. So the department really believes, as I mentioned early on, this is really critical for the industry to move forward to true agronomic practices. CDA approved certified seed program was really developed using the same tools that are used in corn, alfalfa, pinto beans. Nothing is different with the exception of the THC testing to confirm before the farmer plants that the variety he's going to plant is going to produce material that is going to be at 0.3% at a mature crop. So the standards that you'll see here are based on national standards adopted for industrial hemp by the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies and follow the state guidelines for seed labeling laws, all those things. So this is not the department inventing the wheel. This is the department working with other state certifying agents to make sure that this is a normal process. It is a traditional agricultural process. So certified seed is it's really a variety that is proven to produce mature industrial hemp plants with a THC below 0.3 in variety test plots produced across the state. Parent material from those varieties or the rights to reproduce the genetics can be established or then produced under guidelines that ensure purity in fields that are free of diseases, pests, and noxious weeds. So, it's more than a list of varieties. A list of varieties mean almost nothing. They have to be varieties that we know produce and that we know, and then the farmer can be assured that what he's buying is what he's getting. Same thing you would do in any other crop. So it's really not a variety list, it's a process applied to varieties. Testing. So to show kind of a commitment, this is one of the few rules that you'll find that really address the certified seed program at this point. And that is, the department feels really committed to making sure that we can provide farmers with a list of varieties that are below 0.3% THC. We also believe that that's good for the farmer, it's good for the industry. Farmer will have less testing costs, but maybe we can make it almost no testing cost. If you are planting a CDA approved variety, and we can go out there and confirm that you've planted what you said you planted, and it was a CDA approved variety, you shouldn't have to pay for those testing costs. That should be part of the program cost. So, if we get out there, we find that you've planted what you said you planted, our interest is really in making sure that that's what it is, as quick and easy as we can, so that we can move our resources onto places that may not have planted certified seed, and therefore we would take on those costs. Fields planted with CDA approved certified seed may be inspected and sampled to confirm consistency with the planting reports. The department will waive all inspection and or sampling costs if no inconsistencies or violations are found. Again, we would go to a site, if the variety's supposed to be 3 foot tall, and it's 3 foot tall, and it meets all the criteria for that variety, you should not have to pay for sampling. So, that's part of the cost of the program, and the department, as long as we find what we planted, won't be issuing any cost associated with that visit. So to ensure growers know that the varieties they plant comply with the THC limits, the department will conduct variety trials across Colorado. A variety that is below the threshold in all locations may be submitted for production under rules of the program. So, Rule 7.1, a variety of industrial hemp may be approved by the department if it is tested by the department and confirmed to produce mature plants with a delta-9 THC concentration below 0.3% on a dry weight basis in multiple geographic trials. And I think there's a slide later on, but I'll mention it now. We're looking right now at 5 geographic regions: Northeast, Southeast, Front Range, San Luis Valley, and someplace on the western slope. We think if a variety can produce below 0.3 in all those areas, that answers higher altitude, it answers hotter and drier, it answers hot and daytime temperatures along the Front Range, but cool nights. So I don't think we can get any, if a variety passes that, farmer and we should feel confident that it's going to be produced below 0.3 THC everywhere. So there's 4 parts to the process. Application, including the eligibility document that you have the rights to produce the variety. That'll be CSU and CDA will both look at that. Again, that is nothing any different than what you'd find in corn, alfalfa, or pinto beans. THC testing for variety approval, as I mentioned, and I think it'll come up. The CDA will take on that responsibility. Not something we do in other crops. This is really the one exception to the traditional, what I would call rules, but this is how we'll assure farmers get mature plant material that will be below 0.3% THC. Seed certification production from registered and foundation seed. That's really CSU at this point. They are the seed certifying agent mandated by the legislature. So they will do the seed production, certified production, not themselves on their own property, but they will handle it just like they do any other crop. There's Seed Growers Association that may take and do the production, but foundation seed, registered seed, some parts of the process CSU may actually do to help build that stock up, to keep it inside the purity standards that you'll see here in a little bit. But this is really exactly like you find in other crops. And then labeling requirements. You won't see this even at the end of the presentation, because this is really early on in the process. I would tell you that we're in discussions with CSU. The only real discussion point right now is do we go back to that field that the certified seed was on? Do we get a THC test there, and do we put that as part of the bag tag requirement? Is that some value to the farmer so he knows what he's getting? Otherwise, it'll be traditional. You gotta have germination, purity, and all those things. The only thing that may change would be if there were a THC standard that we would put if we felt that was a benefit to the industry. So, what are the eligibility requirements? You gotta have a name of the variety entered, statement concerning the origin of the breeding procedure used to develop it, detailed description of morphological, physiological characteristics of the plant, what makes it unique and different from another one, evidence that supports the identity of the variety. That can be, it's got this characteristic, it yields this, it has, disease resistance, as it says. Anything that helps you identify that your disease is different from something else, okay? A statement delineating geographic areas or areas of adaptation, that's going to be really not all that important initially, as the variety's got to produce everywhere in the state below 0.3. But as this product becomes federally legal, that's what delineates it, where you could ship it. So it would be, if you knew it was not going to be below 0.3% THC in Arizona and southern Texas because the temperatures are higher, you may have to delineate areas that it could be sold to. Statement of how you plan to keep the genetics pure, how you maintain the seed classes, including the number of generations through which it can pass before it has to be. The breeders will understand this part of it. This is really the breeding side of keeping those genetics to make sure that each replication comes through as it's supposed to and has the purity standards it is. A description of the manner in which the variety was constituted in a particular cycle of reproduction or multiplication is specified at the end. Kind of goes back to that. The breeders will know that this is how many generations, this is what I'm going to do, and this is where it's got to enter the marketplace. Any restrictions on a variety specified with the breeder. That can be, again, the geographic or seed production area, the age of the stands, or affecting the genetic purity. And then finally, a sample seed representative of the variety as is to be marketed. Sample be retained to provide control against any future releases of stock that may not be what it was defined as. Again, that variety is supposed to be 3 foot tall, and all of a sudden the material that we find in the field is 10 foot tall. We would want to go back to this sample to confirm what the variety is. Okay? All of these rules that you just saw about eligibility, again, are exactly the same thing you'd find on every other crop that is produced. The THC testing requirement, the CDA will conduct tests. Again, as I mentioned, trials will be established in the northeast, southeast, front range, western slope, San Luis Valley, and we'll be looking at mature plants. We'll be looking at them when they are fully mature. So that farmer that decides to harvest early, he's going to be way under 0.3%. But we won't take those tests. Somebody says, boy, I want this variety always to be harvested in the middle of August. So take your THC test 1st of August. And it's like, but I can't ensure that every farmer is harvesting the middle of August. So these tests will be conducted on mature plants. So the standard has to be below 0.3% THC on a mature plant.